There's a question I got asked at my own kitchen table. My own kitchen table. One of my children sitting right across from me, coffee still warm between us, and she asked it like it was nothing. Like it was just conversation. And I answered. I told her everything. Every number, every plan, every detail. I thought that's what you did with family. You didn't hide things from family. I'm Annie. I'm 81 years old. And I'm going to tell you what happened after that morning. Because what I lost wasn't money. It wasn't property. It was something I can't name exactly, even now, some kind of standing I didn't know I had until it was gone. I grew up in a house where you didn't discuss private things outside the family. My father, Cal, had a way of looking at you if you started talking too much. Not mean, just still, like he was waiting for you to hear yourself. He didn't need to say a word. You just stopped. I carried that into my adult life, kept things close. Didn't volunteer my business, paid my bills, and kept my mouth shut about how close I came to not paying them. There were years, 2 of them, maybe 3, when things were so tight I was selling what little jewelry I had left and skipping dinner so the children wouldn't know. Nobody knew. I made sure of it. So I understood privacy. I thought I understood it anyway. But somewhere in my 70s, I got soft in the wrong places. Started thinking that because I was older, because I'd earned a certain kind of peace, I could just say things, answer things. That the rules that applied when I was raising 6 children and working double shifts, those rules didn't apply anymore. That was my mistake. The first question I learned never to answer was about my money. Angela, my youngest, came over on a Tuesday. She's expressive, that one. Always has been. She came in talking fast, sat down, accepted the coffee I poured, and somewhere in the conversation she asked me directly, what did I have saved? Did I own the house outright? Was the pension enough to cover things? She wasn't being cruel. I know that. She was worried in her way, but I answered her. All of it. Because I thought she's my child. What am I hiding from my own child? By Thursday, I got a call from Marcus, my oldest. He'd spoken to Angela. He had questions about the house, not cruel questions, just questions. Practical ones. The kind that assumed something. And I realized, sitting there holding that phone, that I had just handed my children a map they hadn't asked me for. A map of everything I had. And now they were all looking at it. And the way they looked at me changed, just slightly, just around the edges. Not bad, just different. There's a woman who used to live on the other side of town. I heard about her from Denise once, one of those conversations that starts with something small and lands somewhere unexpected. This woman had mentioned to her whole family at a birthday dinner what her house had appraised at. She thought she was sharing good news. Within 6 months, she said the air in every room changed when her family visited. Compliments got a little more frequent. Visits got a little more purposeful. She told someone, I thought I was being open. I was being naive. There's a reason my father never told us what he made. It wasn't shame. It was wisdom. You give people a number, they stop seeing you and start seeing the number. You become the number. And whatever you were before, the mother, the grandmother, the woman who worked 2 jobs and held things together, that gets filed somewhere behind the arithmetic. When someone asks you now how you're managing, how the finances are, whether you're comfortable, you smile. You say, I sleep fine at night. I've got what I need. And then you change the subject. That's not dishonesty. That's dignity. Those are 2 different things. And it took me until my late 70s to stop confusing them. The second question I learned never to answer, and this one surprised me more, is anything about your children's lives, the good parts especially. This is going to sound strange. We spend our whole lives worried about our children, working for them, praying for them, staying up past midnight thinking about them. And when they succeed, when one of them finally buys a house or gets a promotion or raises a child who comes home with good marks, it feels like the most natural thing in the world to say so. I did it for years. I'd mention Marcus at church, mention how Rochelle was doing at her job. Nothing boastful, I thought, just sharing. But I started noticing something. The women I talked to would smile. They'd nod. They'd say, that's wonderful. And then the conversation would move on, and something in them had moved on too, a little further from me. There was a woman at the senior center. I went there a few times a few years back before my knee got worse, who talked constantly about her grandchildren. Brilliant children. Every week, a new accomplishment. Test scores, recitals, sports. She was so proud. And she was alone at lunch most days. I don't think she ever understood why. The researchers have a name for it. They call it spontaneous trait transference. When you describe what your child has, people don't just hear the story. They start to feel the distance between their life and yours. And that distance doesn't inspire them. It just makes the table feel farther away. One of my grandchildren, the one Marcus has, Jordan, the serious one, he asked me once why I didn't talk about the family more when I was out. He was maybe 15 at the time, old enough to ask real questions. And I said, "Baby, not everybody needs to know what we have. Some things are just ours." He looked at me for a second and then nodded like that made sense. If someone asks about your children, about your grandchildren, about how everyone's getting on, you keep it light. Everyone's healthy, everybody's busy. That's enough. More than enough. Your family's success is not a trophy to show the neighbors. It belongs to your family. Keep it there. Now, I want to stop here for just a second because I have to tell you something mildly ridiculous. While I was figuring all of this out, all this business about what not to say, I was simultaneously having a battle with a jar of pickles that lasted 4 days. 4 days. I tried every trick. Hot water, rubber grip, banging the lid on the counter. Kayla, Denise's daughter, came by after school on the 3rd day and opened it in about 4 seconds. She didn't say a word, just handed it back. Walked over to the couch and sat down like she hadn't just humbled me entirely. There are things that remind you what your actual power is. A pickle jar will do it every time. Anyway, the 3rd question, and this is the one that cost me the most, so stay with me, is anything about your private struggles, your health fears, your past mistakes, the things you carried without ever saying out loud. We live in a time that tells you to share, to open up, to be vulnerable. And there is a place for that. There is a right moment with the right person. I believe that. But I learned the hard way that telling too much too fast to too many, that's not vulnerability. That's just losing ground you didn't know you were standing on. I was at a neighbor's gathering once, years ago. Just a small thing, few women, some food. Someone asked me how I was doing, really doing, and something in me that I hadn't given permission got out. I started talking about Earl, about how quiet the house got after he passed, about how I wasn't sure I was doing it right, any of it, about the weight of things I hadn't said while he was alive. The room got very still, and those women were kind. They were. But in the weeks after that, something shifted in how they spoke to me. Like they were being careful now, like I was someone who needed handling. I didn't want to be handled. I wanted to be talked to. Epictetus, the old Stoic philosopher, the one who started as a slave, he said something that took me years to understand. He said there are things within your control and things outside it. What you choose to share in any given moment, that's yours. That's entirely yours. Don't give it away carelessly. Your health scares are yours. Your regrets are yours. Your past mistakes are chapters that closed, and not every person you meet needs to read them. When someone asks how you're really doing, you can say, "I've had my share of hard days. Today's a good one," and leave it there. But I told you 3 questions, and I want to give you 2 more, because the 3 on the front of this video, those were just the beginning. The 4th thing you must stop answering is every question about your daily health. The knee, the medication, the appointment you had last Wednesday. Now listen, I'm not saying pretend. I'm not saying suffer in silence. I had a health scare 4 years ago that shook me down to the floor. I'm fine. But for a few months there, it was all I talked about. Every time Denise came by, every time one of my children called, they'd ask how I was, and I would tell them. Everything, the tests, the waiting, the not knowing. And I noticed Denise started lingering in the doorway a little less. She wasn't unkind. She was just tired. She had her own hard things. She didn't need mine added to her shift. I thought about something my mother used to do. Ruth never told you she was tired. She just kept moving. I used to think that was a kind of withholding. Now I think it was a kind of courtesy, not pretending nothing was hard. Just deciding that some burdens don't need passengers. When someone asks how you're feeling, I'm hanging in there. The doctors are looking after it. Then pivot. Ask about them. Ask about their week, their children, their garden. The fastest way to make someone feel close to you is to make them feel interesting, not to make them feel needed. There's a difference. And the fifth question, the one that can unravel a family silently without warning, is anything about your will, your inheritance. Who gets what? I almost made this mistake. I was being practical. I had everything arranged, and I thought, well, if I just tell everyone now, at least there won't be confusion later. Thank God something stopped me that day, a kind of hesitation I couldn't explain, because I had seen it happen to another family. A woman I knew had sat her children down at dinner and explained exactly how she planned to divide things. Thoughtfully, fairly, with good reason behind every decision. She thought she was being generous with her clarity. Her eldest daughter didn't speak to the middle son for 11 months, not because anyone was cheated, but because a number had been put in the room and now everybody was measuring themselves against it. The moment you announce a plan, any plan, you create an expectation. An expectation, once it's in someone else's mind, becomes something they feel they're owed. What was an act of love becomes a line item they're watching. You don't want your children watching line items. You want them watching each other, caring for each other. Handle it with a lawyer. Handle it on paper. If someone asks, you say, everything is taken care of. Nobody needs to worry. Keep the love at the table. Keep the documents with the attorney. Those are two separate jobs, and mixing them helps nobody. There's a woman I knew for a long time, who was wonderful with words, generous with what she shared. She told everyone everything. Her money, her children's business, her health, every week in detail, her plans for what would happen when she was gone. She was open the way people tell you to be open. By the time she was in her mid-80s, she ate most of her meals alone. The people who'd known her for 30 years had slowly drifted, not from cruelty, just from the accumulated weight of always knowing everything about her life. She told me once near the end, I thought that if I shared enough, people would stay. She had it backward. What keeps people is mystery, not secrets, mystery. The sense that there is still more to know about you, that you are not fully readable. That sitting with you means you might say something they haven't heard before, see something they hadn't considered. When you answer everything, you leave nothing for anyone to wonder about. And people stop coming to ask. I think about my father sometimes, the way he'd sit at the end of the day, quiet. He'd done what he needed to do, and he wasn't going to tell you about it in any great detail. You knew he was all right because he was there, because he kept showing up, because the lights were on and the roof was holding and breakfast came in the morning. His love language was silence and function, and I used to wish he'd said more. But now, all these years later, sitting in this house that has held more of my life than I care to count, now I think he understood something I didn't. That some things keep their value by not being spoken. That the people who know you best aren't the ones you've told the most to. They're the ones who stayed long enough to learn it on their own. I think about all the years I spent answering every question put to me, thinking it was honesty, thinking it was trust. All it did in some cases was hand people something they didn't know how to hold, and then watch the relationship bend under the weight of what I'd said. The questions you refuse to answer aren't walls. They're just rooms in your house you've decided are yours. Visitors can come in, guests are welcome, but not every room needs an open door. There is something quietly extraordinary about still being here, about having known what it is to be young and tired, middle-aged and afraid, old and unexpectedly at peace with things you never thought you'd survive. I'm grateful for the years, for the coffee that's still warm when Denise drops something off in the morning, for the sound of Kayla's footsteps on the front walk, slow and patient like she's not in any rush to get past whatever I might have to say. For the moments my grandchildren call and ask how I am and mean it, for the fact that I am still the one they ask. You don't get all of that by being an open book. You get it by being a person worth returning to. If you've been sitting here with me a while, thank you. That means something. If something in what I've said hits somewhere familiar, I'd be glad to know it. You're welcome to leave a word in the comments. I read them, even when it takes me a little time. And if you want to come back, there's a button for that. I'll be here. Take care of yourself, whatever that means to you.